The year is 1861. A young nation, barely a century old, finds itself teetering on the precipice of a devastating conflict. The United States, a beacon of hope and democracy, is now facing an internal struggle that threatens to tear it apart. The issue? A deep-seated division over the institution of slavery and the delicate balance of power between the federal government and individual states. This conflict has been brewing for decades, with tensions escalating as the nation expanded westward, bringing the question of whether new states would be free or slaveholding to the forefront of political debate. Brother would turn against brother, father against son, as the nation was consumed by the flames of the American Civil War. Families were torn apart, friendships severed, and communities divided as the country plunged into a brutal and bloody conflict that would last for 4 long years. From the fertile fields of the South to the bustling cities of the North, the war would touch every aspect of American life. The Southern economy, heavily reliant on agriculture and slave labor, faced devastation, while the industrial North mobilized its resources for a war effort that would test the limits of its infrastructure and resolve. Images of carnage and bravery would be forever seared into the nation's memory. The battlefields, once serene landscapes, became scenes of unimaginable horror, where the valor of soldiers on both sides was matched only by the scale of the suffering and loss. The stories of ordinary men and women thrust into extraordinary circumstances would become the lifeblood of a nation grappling with its darkest hour. These personal narratives of soldiers writing letters home, of women taking on new roles in the absence of their husbands, and of children growing up amidst the chaos of war, paint a vivid picture of the human experience during this tumultuous time. This is not just a story of battles won and lost, of generals and politicians. It is a story of strategy and leadership, of decisions made in the heat of battle that would shape the course of history. The names of leaders like Abraham Lincoln, Ulysses S. Grant, and Robert E. Lee would become etched in the annals of American history, their legacies intertwined with the fate of the nation. It is a story of a nation wrestling with its soul, a testament to the human cost of division and the enduring power of unity. The Civil War was a crucible that tested the very foundations of the United States, challenging its citizens to confront the contradictions and injustices that lay at the heart of their society. It is a story that continues to resonate today, reminding us of the fragility of peace and the importance of preserving the ideals upon which our nation was founded. The legacy of the Civil War is still felt in contemporary America, as we strive to learn from the past and build a future that honors the sacrifices made by those who came before us. The lessons of unity, justice, and equality remain as relevant now as they were over a century and a half ago, urging us to remember the cost of division and the value of coming together as one nation. The American Civil War didn't erupt overnight. It was a conflict that had been brewing for many years, with roots that stretched back to the very founding of the nation. It was the culmination of decades of simmering tensions between the North and the South. These tensions were not just political but also deeply cultural and economic. At the heart of this divide lay 2 fundamental issues: slavery and states' rights. These issues were intertwined in a complex web of economic interests, moral beliefs, and political ideologies. The Southern economy, heavily reliant on agriculture, was deeply intertwined with the institution of slavery. Cotton, tobacco, and other cash crops were the backbone of the Southern economy, and they required a large labor force to cultivate and harvest. Plantation owners saw enslaved Africans as essential to their way of life and prosperity. They believed that their economic success and social status depended on the continuation of slavery. The North, with its burgeoning industrial economy, increasingly viewed slavery as morally repugnant and incompatible with the ideals of freedom upon which the nation was founded. The Industrial Revolution was transforming the North, creating new opportunities and a different way of life that did not rely on slavery. Adding fuel to the fire was the debate over states' rights. This debate was not just about slavery, but also about the balance of power between the federal government and the states. The South argued for greater autonomy for individual states, fearing that a strong federal government would infringe upon their way of life and ultimately threaten the institution of slavery. They believed that each state should have the right to decide whether to allow slavery. The North, on the other hand, believed in the supremacy of the federal government and its power to regulate issues of national importance, including slavery. They argued that a unified nation required a strong central government to maintain order and uphold the principles of liberty and justice. As the nation expanded westward, the debate over slavery in new territories ignited further tensions. The question of whether new states admitted to the Union would be free or slave states became a flashpoint in the conflict. Compromises were reached, such as the Missouri Compromise and the Compromise of 1850, but they proved to be temporary bandages on a deep wound. These agreements only postponed the inevitable clash, as neither side was willing to fully concede their position. The stage was set for a showdown that would determine the fate of the nation. The Civil War was not just a battle over territory but a fundamental struggle over the values and future direction of the United States. It was a conflict that would test the very fabric of the nation, and ultimately lead to profound changes in American society. The election of 1860 proved to be the spark that ignited the inferno. Abraham Lincoln, a staunch opponent of slavery's expansion, was elected president. Southern states, fearing that their way of life was under threat, began to secede from the Union. On April 12, 1861, Confederate forces fired upon Fort Sumter in Charleston, South Carolina, marking the official beginning of the American Civil War. The nation was now divided, the stars and stripes pitted against the Confederate battle flag. The early years of the war were marked by a sense of naivety on both sides. Many believed the conflict would be short-lived, a mere skirmish that would be settled within a matter of months. The reality, however, proved far more grim. The first major battle of the war, the First Battle of Bull Run, shattered any illusions of a swift Union victory. Confederate forces, led by the skilled General Thomas Stonewall Jackson, routed the Union Army, sending shockwaves through the North and signaling the long and bloody conflict to come. As the war raged on, two battles, fought hundreds of miles apart, would prove to be pivotal turning points: Gettysburg and Vicksburg. These battles, occurring almost simultaneously, would forever alter the course of the American Civil War. These victories, hard-fought and costly, would shift the momentum of the war in favor of the Union. The significance of these battles cannot be overstated, as they marked the beginning of the end for the Confederacy. Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, became the site of one of the most significant battles in American history. The small town, known for its rolling hills and farmlands, was transformed into a brutal battlefield. For 3 bloody days in July 1863, Union and Confederate forces clashed in a ferocious struggle for control of the strategically important town. The battle saw intense fighting at locations such as Little Round Top, Devil's Den, and the Wheat Field. The Confederate assault on Cemetery Ridge, known as Pickett's Charge, proved to be a costly blunder, decimating their ranks and ultimately sealing their fate at Gettysburg. This ill-fated charge, led by General George Pickett, resulted in massive Confederate casualties. The Union victory, however, came at a heavy price, with thousands of soldiers from both sides lying dead on the blood-soaked fields. The aftermath of the battle left the town of Gettysburg in a state of devastation, with makeshift hospitals and mass graves. Meanwhile, in the West, General Ulysses S. Grant, a tenacious and resourceful commander, had been steadily tightening the Union's grip on the Mississippi River. Grant's strategic brilliance and relentless determination were key factors in the Union's success. The capture of Vicksburg, Mississippi, a vital Confederate stronghold, would give the Union complete control of this crucial waterway, effectively splitting the Confederacy in two. The siege of Vicksburg was a prolonged and grueling campaign, marked by constant bombardment and dwindling supplies for the Confederate defenders. On July 4, 1863, after a grueling siege, Vicksburg surrendered to Grant's forces. The fall of Vicksburg was a devastating blow to the Confederacy, as it severed their access to the Mississippi River and cut off vital supply lines. The Confederacy's hopes of receiving vital supplies and reinforcements from the West were dashed. The loss of Vicksburg, coupled with the defeat at Gettysburg, marked a turning point in the war as the Union gained the upper hand. The tide of the war had turned. The twin victories at Gettysburg and Vicksburg not only boosted Union morale, but also weakened the Confederate resolve. These battles demonstrated the Union's growing strength and the Confederacy's increasing vulnerability. The war would continue for nearly 2 more years, but the outcome was now leaning heavily in favor of the Union. The sacrifices made at Gettysburg and Vicksburg would be remembered as defining moments in the struggle to preserve the United States.